Grab the lampshade. Kensuke Tanabe, one of Nintendo's eldest and most storied producers, has announced that he is leaving the company. Okay, well, announced is a strong word. He actually just kind of mentioned it in an interview with Japanese magazine Nintendo Dream, which was translated by someone and posted to a website called Weibo. So technically this isn't official, since it's a reader translation. It could potentially be inaccurate, and we haven't heard anything on this directly from Nintendo, but it seems pretty straightforward. Tanabe says that Metroid Prime 4 was his last game with Nintendo, and that he's retiring. We can't be certain that he's not just retiring from Nintendo and moving on to a different job or something, but the guy's in his 60s, so I should hope that he's just straight up retiring. If you're a super high-level producer or executive at a huge company for several decades, I think you deserve to retire whenever you darn well please. And according to him, Risa Tabata will be replacing him in producing roles. They've frequently worked closely together over the years. We've seen them pop up together in a number of interviews and whatnot, so it's not surprising at all that she's kinda carrying the torch for him. So Kensuke Tanabe is leaving Nintendo, and I want to talk about this, but I also have to be very, very careful in doing so. Because he and I have had something of a complicated parasocial relationship. Tanabe-san's contributions to Nintendo cannot be downplayed. He's been there practically since the beginning. His credits span every major classic series and every system Nintendo has produced. And he wasn't usually just some vague advisory producer guy. No, he's always been very hands-on. Early on, he did a lot of writing, he did map design, and even when he started taking on producer roles, he never hesitated to get into the nitty-gritty. Kiwi Talks has done interviews with ex-Retro Studios devs, and multiple have mentioned that he had a knack for bosses. In particular, he had great intuition regarding how a boss feels and like guiding the team to make these minute fraction of a second changes to attacks and tells and all that. While he worked on major first-party titles earlier on, in recent years his specialty became working with third-party companies on Nintendo-owned and published first-party titles. You could call these second-party games. You might be surprised to learn that Intelligent Systems is not actually owned by Nintendo, and he's worked with them a lot. Same with Next Level Games, which Nintendo only purchased a few years ago. Retro Studios is owned by Nintendo, but only since 2002. So not just third parties, but Western studios as well. Basically, the studios who make games based on first-party Nintendo IPs, but are kind of separated from Nintendo, either legally or geographically. That's been Tanabe's thing. And it certainly makes sense that someone's got to do that job. Nintendo is very, very protective of their series, so they're not going to just let any old dev team do whatever they want. They are always very hands-on, making sure that every aspect of a game lives up to their standard. For many years, Tanabe has been one of those on-the-ground folks working with the devs on these games. I don't even want to imagine the number of hours the poor guy has spent on flights and in meetings. Ugh. The thing about Tanabe, though, is that he's developed a bit of a reputation over the last decade or so. If his whole thing eventually became working with outside studios, for some reason he decided to pick up a secondary whole thing, which was making fans mad. Kensuke Tanabe is a man of very strong ideas. When he had a vision for a game, he stuck to it, regardless of what fans of any given series might think. He has said as much, and he's clearly cut from the same cloth as a lot of the people at Nintendo, because he's always put new ideas at the forefront, focusing on innovation and change almost more than anything. Being unpredictable is one of Nintendo's strengths, but it's also one of their weaknesses, because change for the sake of change is not always good. New ideas are not automatically better ideas. And if a game brings new ideas to the table, it can't just throw out the old ideas that were absolutely integral to the experience. I highly doubt you need me to recount the whole Paper Mario saga and Tanabe's place in it, but I do feel obligated to at least briefly summarize. The first two games were very highly regarded. The third split fans, but still had really good elements. Ryota Kawade was the lead on those games, and when Tanabe stepped up, everything changed. We can't know what really goes on at Nintendo, or if there's ever like any one person to point a finger at for these kinds of disappointments. I do think that Miyamoto is probably largely responsible for what happened to Sticker Star, but it seems likely that Tanabe took his suggestions way too seriously. Tanabe took a series that was popular because of its story, its characters, and its combat, and did away with literally all of that. Color Splash and Origami King improved in some of these areas, the latter even being seen as a good game by a decent number of fans. But no one denies that, at least to a degree, these games kinda missed the point. From my own perspective, here we have 3 games with phenomenal presentation, lots of really great ideas, and some really fun elements, but also a lot of backwards, confusing, frustrating, even contradictory design choices, along with an almost complete lack of many of the elements that made the first 2, or 3, depending on how you want to look at it, games such beloved classics. Again, new is not the problem. We're okay with new, but new doesn't automatically equal good. You can change something, but you can't compromise its core identity. Food analogies for life! You can put anything you want on a burger. Anything. Experiment. Go wild. Make a burger no one has ever made before, but it has to at least be a burger. It can't be a taco. And if Paper Mario was a burger, Thousand Year Door was a double cheeseburger with grilled onions and a brioche bun. Super was a plain but really well-fried chicken sandwich. And the next 3 games were tacos with varying numbers of rocks in them. But getting away from my own personal feelings about Paper Mario, like really, this is not just about me and my own personal thoughts and emotions. The truth of the matter is that I am not alone here. Regardless of how any one person feels about the modern games, there is no denying that each one has been highly divisive and created a huge critical split. In the case of Sticker Star and Origami King, the sales have still been pretty good, but they've spawned so much drama. And I do not believe that all PR is good PR. Nintendo is a company that strives to make games for everybody. And if half your audience hates what you did, I feel like you've kinda missed the mark. Especially nowadays, this kind of drama only hurts a game. It only spreads the idea that there's something wrong with it, that it's not worth buying. And unfortunately, my issues with Tanabe's design philosophies and insistence on new ideas at all costs don't stop with Paper Mario. He's been a guiding force for Metroid Prime, another series that is like particularly dear to me. I mean, we're talking like 2 of my top 5 Nintendo series. And like, again, I don't know what's going on at Nintendo. A lot of people are involved in these games, but from the surface, it seems like just about every problem with each of these games more or less comes from him. He's got this obsession with the Galactic Federation, specifically. I have not spoken with every Metroid fan yet, but I have personally not met one person who cares at all about the Federation in the Metroid universe. Personally, I think they are actually a weakness. This is a fantastical universe of cool aliens. Samus is this awesome rogue bounty hunter with a magic suit. We don't need generic space marines. We don't need Space America, space cops. Like, keep the space cops out of our Metroid games. I was really disappointed to learn about the very existence of the Federation. I was crushed to learn that Samus was actually a part of this Federation for a time, and I was annoyed that they just kept coming back in the games. It is almost universally agreed that Metroid Prime 3 is good, but some of its weakest elements stem from its desire to pull in more characters and involve the Federation, which significantly hurts that precious feeling of isolation. The isolation that's an integral part of the series' identity. Much of the reason people love it. The Federation is the single least interesting part of the Metroid universe, especially nowadays. Space Marines, I mean, they're ubiquitous in practically all sci-fi. It's one of those generic things that 1 trillion games all share. Whenever there are new trailers revealed at the Game Awards, it's always just like guys in these power suits. Even the name, Galactic Federation, it's like they weren't even trying. Federation, that's just Star Trek. But Tanabe can't get enough of that Federation. He helped make Federation Force, which was exclusively about a bunch of Federation soldiers. That was the entire thing. Samus wasn't even there. And nearly everyone hated it. They hated its very existence. And the thing is, I do applaud the guy for wanting to expand the Metroid universe. Like, I get his thinking behind this. It's not necessarily a bad idea. But he expanded on an element basically no one cared about, and the game was a disastrous flop. Then later on, Nintendo announced Metroid Prime 4, and there was much rejoicing, but Tanabe was once more given the reins, and I tried really, really hard not to worry. I did not even let myself consider that this could be a problem. I thought the guy had some really backwards ideas about Paper Mario, but that didn't necessarily mean that he would fumble Metroid as well. Maybe he had learned from Federation Force and was ready to give the fans a Metroid Prime game they would enjoy. Well, Metroid Prime 4 is here now, and despite Federation Force's reception and the unanimous opinion that the Federation just isn't interesting enough to focus on, like it all, it seems Tanabe never gave up the dream. He never compromised on his vision. Samus is joined by a whole group of Federation soldiers who consistently pop up and compromise that sweet, sweet isolation we're always chasing. This doesn't necessarily ruin the game, but the general consensus is that it does at least hurt the game. And even worse, Prime 4 suffers from a number of other problems, pretty much all of which boil down to this game keeps trying to do things that are not Metroid and failing at every turn. Nearly all of the game's new ideas are simply not good new ideas. We don't know exactly where all these ideas came from, but we know from experience that Tanabe is very hands-on and demanding of control and kind of obsessed with newness. And if he was the source of these ideas, then he has once again taken a series and compromised its core identity in a way that disappoints a tremendous number of fans. And in this case in particular, the results could be devastating. The official numbers aren't in yet. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I am preparing myself for the possibility that the sales are going to be pretty low. At least low considering how much money Nintendo must have spent on a AAA production like this, how long it took, the opportunity cost of having one of their best studios on the project for such a long dev cycle, and of course, how long we all had to wait for the darn thing. For it to be anything other than a great experience after all this, it's downright disheartening, and the future of the series is once more in question. And I wish the Tanabe issues ended with Paper Mario and Metroid, but I'm always getting Chibi-Robo fans chiming in to remind me that he messed with that series as well. Nintendo went through this bizarre time right before the Switch. This was like their weird filler spin-off era. And right next to Federation Force, a game no one asked for that flopped terribly, we had Chibi-Robo Ziplash, a game that changed the genre of its series entirely. I've never played Chibi-Robo, but even I can see that this just isn't Chibi-Robo. Maybe this was their attempt to reinvent the series, to save it from complete retirement. Maybe this was like basically their only option. But from the audience perspective, this was just another tone-deaf deviation no one asked for. And Tanabe even had the gall to tell everyone that if the game didn't sell well enough, it would probably be the end of the series. You want to save this burger restaurant? Better start eating those tacos. Watch for the rocks, though. So this is why I've been saying that I need to be careful talking about Tanabe and how he's leaving Nintendo. I don't want to vilify him. I don't want to like celebrate that he's leaving. In this context, holding personal grudges and like painting people as bad guys is childish, to be frank. Prominent figures that do real, actual harm to other human beings, people who seem to completely lack human decency, yeah, it's okay to not like them and to wish they would go away. still not healthy to let them live rent-free in your head. Hatred really is like getting revenge on someone by drinking poison. It only hurts you. But yeah, if you have to paint anyone as a villain, make it people like this. But making someone out to be some kind of boogeyman because you feel like they messed up the video games you like to play because of creative differences of opinion, basically, it's immature. And I'll completely admit, I've done that in the past. I fell into that trap probably a pretty good amount when I was younger. But I like to think I'm better about it now, and I may not like what Tanabe has done to these series. I may even feel a little bit hurt and certainly frustrated by his complete refusal to ever budge on anything. But I'm sure he's a fine guy. Those devs on Kiwi Talks, they only have nice things to say about him. And even if he's made a lot of mistakes from my perspective, he's been trying his best. That's the thing about people. Most of them are trying their best. Tanabe is not out to get us. He does not have some personal vendetta against these series. This entire time, he has been trying his darndest to make good video games that his fellow folks at Nintendo would be proud of, that embody the company's most important ideals. Kensuke Tanabe is a human being, and it would be childish to be like, ha! He's gone! Good riddance! But I also can't deny that I do kind of think he might not have been a good fit for this position, and I am, to a degree, kind of glad that he's not going to have control over these series anymore. And here's where I have to be really, really careful. It would be completely irresponsible to start wildly speculating about why he's leaving. But I have to at least ponder aloud, if anything, just for the sake of the thought experiment, if maybe, possibly, the response to some of his more recent games has at least some small thing to do with it. Once again, he's worked on tons and tons of games. Dig through old interviews and you'll find him talking about all sorts of cool stuff in all sorts of cool games. Apparently the idea of a giant egg on top of a mountain cracking and the world ending, that was him. His contributions to eternal, beloved titles, many of which are probably invisible and unknown to us, are probably plentiful, beyond plentiful. Who knows what other ideas were his, and he just, never said it in an interview. But when you look at his recent stuff, you see a trend. I haven't done a super deep dive figuring out every role he's ever had on every project, but it seems to me that over the last decade, there have been a handful of games where he has clearly had a very strong role and has been very forward-facing and done follow-up interviews and stuff. These games are Metroid Prime Federation Force, Chibi-Robo Ziplash, the last few Paper Mario games, and now Metroid Prime 4. I'm probably missing some games, but those really do seem like the most prominent ones, at least when you try searching for the guy. These are the times when he has popped up in articles and stuff to talk about the games he's been making. Stepping away from my own personal feelings, purely looking at it from a cold, calculated business perspective, I have to wonder if Nintendo has been happy with how all these games have turned out. Because 2 of these games were dismal, critical, and commercial failures, with another selling very, very poorly as well, despite pretty okay reviews. One of them released during the coveted holiday window during the Switch 2's very first year on the market, and after a probably very expensive 8-year dev cycle, and landed with a thud. And every single one, every game on this list, created a huge stink, generated a ton of bad PR, incited mass outrage online, and left literally millions of fans feeling really, really bummed. Nintendo likes new ideas. They like pushing their characters into new territories, but this can't be okay, right? This has got to be a big red flag. They entrusted some of their very dear legacy IPs to Tanabe, and he consistently put out titles that largely missed the point of those IPs. In the last decade, it's felt like his trademark, his signature style, was trying to fix what wasn't broken. Maybe he was trying to breathe new life into these series, to modernize them, make them appeal to a wider audience, to help them do new things they couldn't before. I am sure he had the best intentions, but he just didn't succeed. Again and again, even with the couple of times the sales were okay, he quite simply failed to deliver the kind of joyous, almost universally loved experiences Nintendo strives for. I mean, obviously Nintendo puts out plenty of games that split audiences and critics. They're a company made up of a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas. But with Tanabe, the critical splits haven't been occasional. They have been completely consistent. I couldn't blame anyone for looking at his track record and being like, yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea to let this guy be in charge of all these series anymore. That is not to say that I think Nintendo fired him. They're like furious with Metroid Prime 4 and they wanted to get him out of there. No, nor am I implying that they did that gross thing that apparently happens in corporate Japan where it's like socially inappropriate to fire someone, so you like demote them and put them in a closet and emotionally isolate them and get them to quit. I've heard about this. Maybe it's true, but I've never worked in an office in Japan, so I'm not sure. Like, I really doubt he's leaving in total disgrace or anything. Again, he's in his 60s. He's at retirement age. He may just be retiring. But this coming immediately after Metroid Prime 4 is a little bit hard to ignore. I don't know if any Nintendo game has ever had development this troubled, and releasing it to a bunch of angry fans who say it's not good enough, that all your decisions were bad, that's gotta take its toll on a guy. Like, I feel bad for him. Maybe it was a really hard project and he just decided he didn't want to go through all this anymore. For all we know, he's totally sticking to his guns. He still believes he did everything right. Fans can just deal with it. But he also doesn't think he's got another big game in him. Maybe he's spent enough time on flights and in meetings to last 100 lifetimes. I mean, a person can only ship so many hundreds of video games before they're pretty much spent, right? But that is completely all speculation. Really, all we know is that he is leaving. And he could be leaving for any number of reasons. Like retiring. Like, really, seriously, that is such a good reason to leave a company. He is leaving, and I am happy that someone else is going to get a chance with these series, because fresh blood and new ideas, that's the whole point, right? That's his whole thing. So there you go. That's a way to spin it into a positive. And I really do wish him the best. I do. Like, if I could, I would thank him for all the great games he has helped make over the years. I mean, come on. Giant egg on a mountain? That right there. Although, actually, while I was doing research for this video, one of the Retro Studios devs revealed that apparently Tanabe was directly responsible for the Spider Ball and Boost Guardians in Metroid Prime 2. So I want to take back everything I said and say, Tanabe, I never want to see your face again.